the most contentious and costly midterm elections, with spending topping $4 billion. And so many auto calls on Monday from political campaigns that phone service was disrupted in New England.
Silence must have been pretty blessed for the families that had gotten dozens of phone calls over the last few days. You know, we're going to be keeping a close eye on a lot of key states as the results start pouring in tonight. Early in the night, I'm going to pay special attention to two states in the Midwest, Ohio and Indiana. They were both won by President Obama, and Democrats are defending 8 seats there right now. If Republicans win half or more of those 8 seats, they are heading to control of the House.
But another clue will be Kentucky, where the polls close at 6 p.m. there. And so that race between Republican Rand Paul and Democrat Jack Conway will give a first clue to whether Republicans can control the seat, and it's kind of like a must-win for them.
That's right. That's a hold for the Republican Party. And, of course, we're going to look at the Tea Party today. What will we learn about its force? There are more than 130 Tea Party-backed candidates running for Congress. Sarah Palin's played a big role with the Tea Party as well, and what happens today will have a big impact on her future plans.
Of course, we have our correspondents spanned all across the country, out in force, covering all the angles, the key races. So let's go first to Jake Tapper at the White House there. Good morning, Jake.
Good morning, Robin. Well, the political terrain is about to shift dramatically. By this time tomorrow, top Democrats expect that John Boehner will be on his way to be the new Speaker of the House. The big questions, of course, how big will his majority in the House be, and what will be the fate of the Senate?
Marathon campaigner former President Bill Clinton stumped throughout the day and late into the night, visiting 5 states in the last 24 hours, ending in Florida, where he made one last appeal.
I think Florida is for everyone. I think I will vote.
The First Lady hoped luck would be a lady in Vegas for endangered Senate leader Harry Reid.
My husband, he can't do this alone.
After which, she crisscrossed the country to Philly to push struggling Senate candidate Joe Sestak.
Can we do this?
House Republican leader John Boehner, smelling victory, blasted President Obama for telling Latino voters they should, quote, punish their, quote, enemies for opposing immigration reform.
Mr. President, I have a word to describe those people who have the audacity to speak up against the big government. And, Mr. President, that word isn't enemies. They're patriots.
In a radio interview, the president acknowledged his poor choice of words.
And I probably should have used the word opponent instead of enemies.
Vice President Biden rallied in Delaware with Democrat Chris Coons.
Go out and vote. I am positive Delaware's coming back. I'm positive America's coming back.
Polls have Coons leading Republican Christine O'Donnell by double digits. Her Hail Mary, a half-hour ad on local TV.
I want to go down to Washington and fight.
President Obama, meanwhile, is taking his last-minute get-out-the-vote efforts to the radio airwaves, hitting stations in Los Angeles, Chicago, Jacksonville, Florida, and Las Vegas today.
My name may not be on the ballot, but the future of the country in terms of us being able to move forward, create jobs, grow the economy, make sure young people get a good education, all that's going to be dependent on me having some folks in Congress who are ready and willing to cooperate.
And George, on Facebook, Sarah Palin declared today to be our Freedom Day. Our revolution continues each election at the ballot box. Let freedom ring. George.
Okay, we'll be watching that Facebook page overnight. Thanks, Jake. We're going to dig in now to the Senate a little bit more right now. Here at the board, you see the current makeup of the Senate. Democrats hold 59 seats. Republicans hold 41. So in order for Republicans to get control of the Senate, they're going to have to pick up 10 seats tonight to get to the 51 they need to control the Senate. Some of their best chances right now, Arkansas. They expect John Boozman to defeat Blanche Lincoln, the Democratic incumbent. Also in Wisconsin, businessman Ron Johnson likely to defeat 3-term Democratic Senator Russ Feingold. But the big prize for Republicans tonight in Nevada, the Democratic leader Harry Reid fighting for his political life right now, and John Karl is there.
Hey, I'll tell you, going into this, George, this race is unbelievably close. I have been talking to strategists in both camps, and they both, of course, have their own internal polls, and also there are the public polls. And across the board, this thing is seen as a virtual tie right now.
A virtual tie. And also, John, there's been a lot of early voting out there, and you hear different sides. The Democrats ahead by about 9,000 among the voters that have already voted, and it could be up to half the electorate. But Republicans say that's actually underperforming.
Yeah, and, by the way, it's incredible, the numbers, because you have 40% or almost 40% of registered voters have already voted. In a midterm election out here, that would be a good vote overall, including Election Day. So it's a lot of people. The Democrats do have that lead, nearly 10,000 votes. But their lead is small relative to the number of Democrats in the state because there are more registered Democrats. And what Republicans will tell you is that Republicans usually lead on Election Day. That's when their voters usually turn out. So they look at the early vote numbers and think that they are pretty good. But I've got to tell you, they're not, unbelievably optimistic here. The word out here is cautiously optimistic. Republicans I've talked to acknowledge this race could definitely go either way.
Another real cliffhanger, Colorado. Michael Bennet, the Democratic incumbent in Colorado, has really held on here against Ken Buck, and both sides say right now that one could go down to the wire.
That is probably the second closest race in the country right now, and Republicans are looking at these two. Of course, if they're going to have any prayer of taking over the Senate, they've got to win both. I've talked to Republican strategists this morning who say that they believe they probably have a slightly better chance in Colorado. But Ken Buck is, one of those Tea Party candidates who knocked off the choice of the Republican establishment, Jane Norton in Colorado. And he's faced a real problem in terms of women voters. So the question is, how badly does he lose that? You remember a comment, George, that he had not long ago where he said that that Colorado needed a senator who wore cowboy boots, not high heels.
That's right. I do remember that. Independent voters key in the state of Colorado, especially women. Okay, John Carl, thanks very much. Robin?
All right, Nevada, of course, as we've been talking about, that's key. And then we have West Virginia. It closes there at 7:30. So a lot of key races to keep an eye on, including the battle for President Obama's old Senate seat in Illinois. Chris Bury is in Chicago for us this morning. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Robin. Voting here is already underway. The stakes are high. For the White House, of course, losing Barack Obama's old Senate seat would be a huge embarrassment. After all, he's put himself on the line, making 3 campaign stops here, including a giant rally over the weekend. But most polls are now giving a slight edge to the Republican Mark Kirk, a congressman, over Alexei Giannoulias. Both candidates wound up last night on their home turfs. Kirk at a bowling alley in the Chicago suburbs. Giannoulias, a Greek-American, at a Greek restaurant here in Chicago. But Obama's home state, once among the bluest in America, appears poised to turn red.